Hello, hello.
Hi.
I think we're live. I hope this finally worked. We were having technical difficulties. Hello. Henry, say hello.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Emma, you want to say hi?
Hi.
Shout out to Texas. Hello, Tori.
Hello. Brittany.
Brittany.
Fran.
Fran. Hey, Fran, you sent me a text like a month ago, and I
Hey, Ray.
realized I forgot to answer it.
Ooh.
So. Hello, all. Some of you probably don't even know who we are, and that's great because it means that the church is continuing to grow without us. So I'll let everybody introduce themselves. Who wants to go first?
Why don't you start? Tell everybody who you are.
Emmett.
This is Emmett. So you can tell Emmett's drinking his coffee.
Yeah. I'm Kaylee. This is Henry.
Henry just woke up from a nap.
Yeah.
Hello, Rita. Chris, hello, hello. All over the country now. I see Zach has joined. For those of us who don't know us, we joined with the
He's one.
original, I don't know what you would call us, founders, those who helped start the church. Served as one of the pastors and with a lot of other really good folks. Emmett, Aurelia says she likes your tie.
What do you say?
I didn't say anything.
She wrote it. Isn't that cool? She can talk to us with her writing.
You know, when we look back and reflect on, you see yourself, on starting the church, you know, you'll hear people say like, and other folks say, I started a church or something, and it was definitely a we situation. I mean, that's why the church is doing so well now. Everybody coming together. It was never a like single person leader church. Everybody came together, you know, from the beginning. Aurelia was our theological conscience. Matt was always had care on his mind. So we miss y'all. We love you. We have a church that we love now. There's some good people, but nothing like Peace of Christ Church.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right, well,
We're gonna.
y'all are free to
Depart.
stay, but
Yeah.
okay.
See you later, everybody. We miss you. We love you.
Okay, here's the question that I wanted to bring this morning. That would be sort of fun for us to think about, and I need you to give me your thoughts because more than anything, this is just a question. This isn't really anything that I have figured out. But what will the church say about us in 100 years? Now, first off, you got to say, what does the church look like in 100 years? What does the church mean now, right? Like there's lots of different types of churches out there. So just feel free to interpret that statement, the church, however you want. You can, I don't know. You may not even have predictions. I mean, what will the church look like? How institutional will it be or not be? What kind of church are we talking about? Are we talking about the church in the West? Are we talking about emerging church in different places around the world? I don't know. But feel free to interpret that however you'd like. But what is the church going to say about us in 100 years? And here's why I asked the question. I've recently been reading sermons from pastors about 100 years ago, around the time of the flu of 1918. And it's just really interesting to see the things you're talking about. And like some folks seem to be more socially aware, and then other stuff I read and I just cringe. I think, oh gosh. But then I started thinking, what am I saying or doing now that 100 years from now people are going to cringe at? Or what am I doing or saying now that people are going to say, hey, they were a little bit of... So I want you to type in the comments if you have anything. I don't know. What is the church talking about now? We'll be glad future generations can look back and maybe approve or be proud or say at least we started the conversation. And then what are we not talking about now? The future church will wonder, how did we miss it? How did we miss that? What are we not talking about? What needs to be talked about? I'm not saying we have to solve everything right now. I'm not talking about trying to judge other folks because of what they're not talking about. I'm not trying to get negative here. It's just the reality is there are things that are just not on our radar that maybe they need to be on our radar soon. Feel free to type in the comments if you if you have any thoughts. Here's some stuff that I put together in the last 20 minutes or so. We're entertaining conversations around sexuality and gender construction that 100 years ago they weren't. I think we obviously have a long way to go. At least we're having the conversation. And let's see. Fran says we're not talking about the environment enough, not taking it seriously. Current churches and future churches must always evolve and be willing to have tough conversations. Yeah, I mean, it's got to start somewhere, right? It's got to start with a conversation. You don't have it all figured out. You gotta work through it. It's a great comment. I would say 100 years from now, those conversations are going to continue. It's not like we've woken up and figured it all out now. My hope is that the church looks community-based and less formal in structure. My desire is that it is no longer about heaven and hell. Yeah. And my hope is that the church becomes nomadic. And let me see if I can get this whole comment. And less stagnant in its ability to serve. Very good. I love it. Yeah, I mean, the church of my youth talked a lot about hell. I mean, talked a lot. It's interesting, this concept of salvation. Generally, and this is sort of a broad generalization, but in the Old Testament, when we talked about salvation, it was a rescuing from literally something, right? Like being oppressed by a nation or whatever. So you're either being rescued from something or to something. What do we need to be rescued from and towards something today? Okay, here's some good comments. I don't want to miss these. The church in general is not addressing mental health, domestic family violence in the ways that technology and humanity are interacting. Oh my gosh, such a good comment. I wish we were better with mental health. It's like, and it wasn't even on my radar until a few years ago, unfortunately. I mean, I don't remember when I was in seminary ever that really even coming up much. I mean, maybe a little bit of as a part of self-care or something, but great comment. Domestic and family violence. My goodness, yes. We need to be preaching about this from the pulpit. I've told some of y'all this before, but if there's ever a sermon I wish I had preached at Peace of Christ that I didn't, it was around spanking and hitting our kids. Oof. I don't know. Now that I have kids, I just can't even imagine hitting my kids. But, we need to talk about this from the pulpit. The most vulnerable in our society, we hit them. Ooh, no. We need to speak out about that sort of thing. Technology and humanity interacting. Anybody watch Black Mirror? San Junipero episode? Yeah, go look that one up if you haven't. My honest hope and desire is for the LGBTQ plus communities no longer feel separate from the church and are valued as whole beings. Yes, women as well. Yes. Oh, so good. So good. The church isn't saying, I'm sorry enough. Yes. Can it start with I'm sorry? We set the example of doing work and not being afraid to apologize when we get it wrong. There's got to be room for critique. Yes, critique ourselves, listen to other critique, have grace through all of it. Literally the first time I was ever said, I'm sorry about LGBTQ people, how they were treated, was your sermon in 2017. Yeah. I'm proud of our little part of the Church Universal for talking about white supremacy, trauma, misogyny, LGBTQ justice. Yes, Fran. I mean, it's not till the last few years that I've woken up to the part that I've played in white supremacy and how history and family systems and church systems and political influences and all these things shape me. I mean, I'm still waking up to it now. Trauma, yes, being able to name trauma and talk about religious trauma, misogyny, LGBTQ justice, very good. The Religious Studies Project, okay, I'll check that out. I'm not sure I know about that. I would love to see Arizona pastors lay down their arms and denounce violence as the best option for protection. Yeah, I mean, you ever wonder 100 years from now how they're going to look back and, just our view of violence? It wasn't until I think I was in seminary when I started to wake up to violence and just don't even think about it. Now I got kids and there's violent commercials on YouTube things they're watching, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. The military-industrial complex, how much money we spend on the military versus healthcare and housing and education. Is the church waking up to listening to marginalized voices? I hope so. Not sure. Not sure if they are, or we are. What about a concern for the collective good? It's not like we would be the first people to ever be concerned for the collective good, but I'd love to see the church wake up to that. What about the economy? Wealthy, progressive, and liberals can get really uncomfortable when we start talking about economic justice, debt forgiveness, Jubilee in the Bible. What does Jubilee look like today? One of our church starts is called Jubilee Baptist Church. They're in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and debt forgiveness is a really important part of what they do. What about payday lending? A lot of churches are starting to realize, how these payday lenders are preying on folks in society and trying to stand up to it and see what they can do. Let's see, race and mixed race population need to be addressed more often. The church in America needs to step up when it comes to. Yeah, that's good. Sorry, the comments are sort of coming in fast now. Big oil, big ag as driving political forces and lobbies for unjust policy toward marginalized peoples and the environment. Different worship styles among denominations, more men who pastors talking about consent and sexual assault. Yes, more conversations on relationship styles and ethical non-monogamy. And sexuality, yeah, it'll be interesting to see where conversations around human sexuality go. I'm really glad that we're having this conversation around consent. And, I hate that it took the Me Too movement to, wake us up to this. But I hope that as we're talking about sexual ethics and those sorts of things, I'm really glad that we got here. Again, that's not anything I can ever remember learning about in the time of my youth. Let's see. What about reparations? Why aren't we talking more about reparations? Especially as biblical people, Jesus literally told Zacchaeus, you're gonna engage in reparations. Reparations are a very Jesus-centered thing. White people can get really. I don't like to talk about reparations much, do they? But I think we need to start. We need to talk more about reparations. From a government standpoint, absolutely. But we even need to talk about it from the church. What could the church do? I've heard about some really cool things where colleges and universities are setting aside scholarships for certain peoples, or I know of a local church who is setting up a scholarship for HBCU. It's pretty cool. Again, I don't think it has to be either or. I think you can do both and. But we need to have these conversations, and we obviously need to listen to those who have been the most harmed whenever we're having these conversations. I fear that what would happen is, the government would just be a bunch of white guys would get in a room and make some statement or something. The most privileged folks would determine reparations. Of course, we all need to have these conversations, but we need to center around marginalized voices. Poverty and hunger in rural populations. Yes, women's health. America has third world maternal death rates. Yeah, so poverty and hunger in rural populations. Yeah, that's really big. That's good. Look up my friend Jason Coker and Stephanie Vance and the work they're doing, something called Together for Hope. They work a lot with rural poverty, doing really good stuff. What about how animals are treated? What would it be like to treat animals more mercifully? In our eating habits? I don't know, somebody asked me recently, they said, do you think we'll have zoos in the future? That's a good question. I mean, I remember in Austin there was like this animal sanctuary. It seemed a little bit different. I don't know, the way people treat pets. There's a lot of different ways people treat pets. Will we have pets 100 years from now? I don't know. I got a couple of dogs, and I love them. I hope I treat them well. Yeah, okay, so let's think about, what about the death penalty? That's like something that sort of comes up and then dies down dies down. That's a terrible way to say it. Comes up and then we forget about it. But the death penalty, I mean, it's terrible. Gosh. What about how the churches view science today will be viewed 100 years from now? Of course, we'll continue to have new discoveries. Things will evolve. I mean, technology will continue to evolve. But at least how open are we today, I think, will make a difference. I mean, I hope that I'm not saying super cringy stuff that people in the future look back and think, gosh, this person wasn't open-minded when it came to science. Animal treatment is something I'm talking a lot these days. I think 50 years we will be like, what? Can you believe we slaughtered 2 million beings a day? Yeah. This is sort of a shameful thing for me because I when I was in seminary, there was a speaker who came that started talking about animal ethics and animal justice, and I sort of started to get into some of that, and then it's like it wasn't as much of a priority, but the stuff continues to pop up. Watch like a 10-minute documentary on factory farms on YouTube, and then oh my goodness. I won't give that as homework because it is really violent, but if you want to be woken up to that sort of thing, I don't know. Say a prayer and consider it. There's actually a document here. Here's what I would say. There's a documentary called Eating Mercifully that came out 10 or 12 years ago. It's about 30 minutes long. Eating Mercifully. Check that one out. Accredited dues do a lot of conservation efforts to save animals. That is a good thing. That's a good thing. We should not be having to have conversations about drinking disinfectants. Yeah, well, if we all drink disinfectants, we know from now even Cowspiracy, okay? Cowspiracy is a good one. I belong here. I don't know. I'm sorry if I'm breaking the rules here. Let's keep going. I find it really interesting. Some of your comments are interesting too. What if the church started preaching on these things now? I don't know. Here's a series. One of my favorite things I used to love to do is when we sit around and talk about series. like you could call a series 100 years from now, and just talk about things that, how will we be viewed 100 years from now? It'd be really, really interesting. Start talking about things. We ask a lot of questions. As a progressive church, seems like it would be fitting. What about how the church is handling the global pandemic right now? How is the church handling the global pandemic? I mean, we're in the middle of it. Unfortunately, we're probably still at the beginning of it. Although, Georgia's open, Texas is open, right? People keep. I'm in my house. Not a whole lot of for us. I think that there's probably some, it's sort of that wheat and chaff metaphor that's going on right now in the pandemic. And we're thinking about what really matters. I mean, I miss community dearly. I think about the ways the church is needed. I think that we're probably going to shed a lot of stuff that is not needed. Yeah. That's good. It's good. How about this? Okay, so gerrymandering, the right to vote, voter suppression. These are things that need to be talked about a little bit. I mean, you want to talk about a very privileged people view voting very differently. I've come here now that I live in Atlanta, and I'm just hearing stories of voting suppression that's been happening and is still happening. When we first got here in 2018, Stacey Abrams lost by 20,000 votes. And the amount of vote suppression throughout the state, story after story after story, is just unbelievable. I think we need to talk about this more. And how do we advocate for that more? Let's see. I think related to that is just different, related to gerrymandering, whether that be political gerrymandering or gerrymandering for school districts. You want to keep certain types of folks together, and you want to make sure that the economics matches what they want the economics to match. This is something that's been on my mind, and I've seen it just about everywhere I go. Obviously, I say 100 years from now, I think we're going to look back and how did the church respond to racial justice? Have we figured out that tolerance isn't enough, that we're going to need to fight for anti-racism? Places around the world, it's just going to keep popping up, but how are they going to look at what we're doing now? And are we speaking out? Or are we acting? Are we listening? Immigration, I'd cringe to think 100 years from now in textbooks, whatever textbooks look like then, there's going to be pictures of kids in cages at the border. What are we doing to speak out about that? What are we doing about that? Okay, the church needs to talk openly about addiction and help those that need it, and instead of burying it. Very good, yeah. Tokenism is not the same as true inclusivity and diversity. That is not kindness. Ooh, yeah, good question. I actually read through a thread last night on tokenism that just made me step back and really think about my approach. I don't know. So very good. Let's see, what else? What about housing? Those of us who are privileged when it comes to housing probably just don't think much about it. Again, other things just related to education. What does equity look like in education? What does equity look like in education? What about ableism? Oh my gosh, this is another one that I just look back and think, oof. I overlook it. I'm in my language, the things I do, the events I've organized. I just make a lot of assumptions about that sort of thing. I'm learning. I'm learning a lot there as well. Native voices, colonialism. What will it take for us to wake up more to that? My gosh. Okay, so when I was a kid in youth group, I remember they talked a lot about things not to do. Don't cuss. I didn't listen. They talked a lot about not having sex, and there was just a lot of angst around that sort of stuff. Talked a lot about hell. Yeah, indigenous peoples, they should not be ignored or sidelined. The church should rally, cry, and fight for their sacred spaces. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. So good. So what do we need to do to help make a better future for the next generations? When I say our kids, I don't just mean our kids. I mean the next generation coming up. What do we need to talk to them about? What do we need to listen to them? That's another place of privilege. Are we listening to children? Are we very age-centered? There's an ageism that can be against older folks, against younger folks. What needs to be brought to the surface there? Okay, now that I've sufficiently given you so much angst about all the world problems. No, I hope what I did was got you thinking and challenged you a little bit. I was originally going, I think, preach this next week. This next Sunday was originally what I was going to do. This global pandemic came along, sort of messed up everything. So I miss you all. This wasn't what I was going to preach on. I have another thing that I want to preach on that I haven't preached anywhere that I'm sort of saving for the church if that ever happens. Maybe it'll be online if it ever works out, or maybe it'll be in person. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? But I love you all. I miss you all. You've helped form me. It's not the same without you. I'm so glad that we've been able to continue to be friends. Please continue to be friends. I love seeing the church, how it grows and continues to challenge me. I still try to jump in and listen to as many sermons as I can. I jump into live stuff. Y'all are doing such incredible things. It's what we miss the most of, not being in Texas. We miss you all so dearly. We love you. And thank you all for joining in today. Great job with all the comments. And I assume do I keep the live video up or do I let it go? I'm going to keep it up, Aurelia. You can come in and delete it if you want. I just know there's been a lot of good comments, and I would hate for somebody to want to go back in and look for a reference or a documentary or a book or something like that, and it got deleted. So I'm going to leave it up. Aurelia, if you'd like to delete this, go for it. But we love you all. We miss you. Thank you for spending time with us today. Bye-bye.